The frontier moon of Greyridge grew quiet at dusk when thin blue clouds slid across the pale sky, and the twin red suns dipped behind low hills. On a lonely plain sat Nathan's farm, a ribbon of green cut into chalk-white soil. The land had two rusty plows, 3 shaky irrigation pipes, and one stubborn owner who believed patience could coax life from dust. Every evening Nathan Smith walked the fence line, counted broken posts, and whispered promises to the young shoots. Hired workers were scarce and costly, so he worked alone, hoping this season would be kinder than the last. On one such evening, shapes appeared at the far edge of the wheat. 3 small figures stood beside a taller one whose cloak glimmered silver. Nathan gripped his worn shock staff and approached. The tall figure raised empty palms. Her voice tired yet steady. "Farmer," she said, "my name is Diria. My children are hungry. Let me work your fields and feed them." Behind her stood a boy of 8, a girl of 6, and a toddler clinging to her leg. Their cheeks were hollow, but their eyes still held hope. Nathan had heard of the Solari, wanderers since drought ruined their world. They were said to sense water and air the way sailors taste salt and wind. He looked at his storehouse. Enough to last winter, but only barely. Charity felt risky, yet the children's thin shoulders weighed on his heart. "I can spare supper," he said at last. "Tomorrow we find out if your hands match your promise." Diria bowed once, and the children's sigh of relief drifted over the rows like cool night air. Inside the farmhouse, Nathan warmed root stew thickened with grain. Diria guided the children to a bench, teaching them not to touch anything without permission. When bowls were served, she split her share, giving half to the little ones before tasting any herself. After they ate, she rinsed the dishes and wiped the table with practiced care. Nathan felt embarrassment and gratitude mingle. Perhaps fate had sent the help he needed. He offered the storage loft as shelter and carried up blankets that smelled of sun-bleached cotton. The children fell asleep before Diria tucked the last corner. Nathan climbed down the ladder, heart heavier with responsibility, but lighter with unexpected hope. Before dawn, he found Diria outside, tracing irrigation lines with slender fingers, head tilted as if listening to soil. Morning light showed faint silver streaks in her hair and pale markings on her wrist scars. From long travel, he guessed. She spoke of stone veins that could hold moisture. On Greyridge she sensed similar pockets. Nathan listened, skeptical, yet curious. They began with simple chores. He taught her how to guide the plow, how deep seeds should rest. Diria's muscles remembered rhythms older than wandering, and she learned fast. Her eldest, Reith, lugged seed sacks almost his own weight, determined to match human strength. Marin, the middle child, planted colorful stones to scare winged pests. Little Sarah chased dust moths and giggled in bright bursts that made the field feel alive. Neighbors drifted past on hover carts, slowing to stare. A few waved polite welcomes, others frowned, whispering about risks. Nathan ignored them. Sweat ran down his spine. But for the first time in years, the farm rang with voices instead of silence. Each clang of metal and splash of water sounded like a promise being forged. Midday heat forced a break under the lone shade tree. Nathan poured water from a clay jug. Diria instructed the children to breathe slow before drinking so empty stomachs would not cramp. Then she told a story of Solari orchards that grew under mirrored canopies, leaves silver on top, green beneath, reflecting harsh light back into space. The children listened wide-eyed. Nathan imagined trees shining beneath strange stars. The afternoon grew hotter, air shimmering above the soil. Nathan worried the children would tire, yet they pressed on with quiet resolve. Reith invented a game, pacing each row and chanting numbers so Marin could drop seeds at even intervals. She answered with a lilting Solari melody that rose and fell like waves. The music drifted across the field and made the wheat sway as if dancing. Even Nathan timed his shovel strokes to their rhythm. Each shared laugh painted fresh color onto land that had seemed forever gray. Work resumed. Clouds gathered low and thick, unusual for the season. Diria sensed the dry storm-hot winds that shred young plants but leave no rain. She knelt, pressed a palm to earth, and hummed a low note. Nathan thought he saw soil darken where her hand touched, as if drawing hidden dampness upward. Maybe it was only shadow, yet seedlings straightened after her touch. And hope sprouted in his chest. Sunset arrived quickly. Tools were stored, gates secured, and little Sarah carried up to the loft half asleep. At the doorway Daria paused. "Thank you," she said. "Today my children ate and worked with pride. We will earn our place." Nathan nodded. "Tomorrow we plant the north field," he replied. "Rest well." He sat on the porch afterward, muscles aching in a welcome way. Stars rose over Greyridge. Bright and cold. Somewhere beyond, great fleets argued over power he would never touch. But here, on this patch of soil, an alien widow and her 3 children had traded labor for bread, and life had answered with a fragile beginning. Nathan breathed the night air and believed the next dawn might bring more than survival. Perhaps real growth for all of them. He smiled at the thought and watched a lone firefly wink against the dark horizon. Dawn broke soft and pale over Greyridge, yet Nathan found Daria already in the south field. Her cloak tucked high so she could kneel in the dirt. Ruth stood beside her with a wooden rod, tapping the ground every 2 steps. Each tap made a small puff of dust rise, and each puff earned a nod from his mother. Nathan walked closer, boots crunching dry stubble. "Early start," he said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Daria smiled without stopping. "Reith listens for hollow places," she answered. "These spots hide little pockets of cool air." "Roots like them?" Nathan tried it, tapped twice, heard nothing but dull thuds. He shrugged and fetched the old plow team to Slomack mules, whose joints squeaked with age. Ruth's eyes widened at the shining steel tines. Marin and Sarah followed, dragging a squeaky cart loaded with seed. They formed a loose chain of motion, Nathan steering the plow in long curves, Daria pacing beside him to watch depth, Ruth marking pockets, Marin sprinkling seed, and tiny Sarah dropping colored pebbles to frighten crows. Dawn light painted their shadows long and gold, making 5 shapes dance over barren land. By mid-morning, sweat beaded on Nathan's brow, and the mech mules hissed steam. They paused under the shade tree where yesterday's stories had lived. Nathan passed a jug. Daria checked each child's pulse at the wrist before letting them drink. Across the fence rolled a hover cart laden with chrome tools. The driver, Grant Turner, owner of a vast agrolab just over the ridge, leaned out. "Morning, Nate," he called. Then he eyed the Solari. "New hands." Nathan kept his tone even. "Neighbors lending help." Grant sniffed. "Careful who you trust. Folks around here remember the Solari drought raids." Daria lowered her gaze but kept calm. Nathan felt heat crawl up his neck. "They're in every meal," he said. Grant shrugged, swung the cart around, and sped off, parting a fan of dust that settled on their clothes. Marin coughed. Reith watched the craft disappear with narrowed eyes. They returned to work. Daria suggested spacing the seed rows wider to save water. Nathan hesitated. The old manual preached tight rows for maximum yield. Still, the moon's soil broke rules daily, so he agreed. She showed him how to press the fingers flat against soil, twist lightly, and feel hidden moisture swirl up like cold smoke. When he copied the move, he felt a faint chill on his fingertips, a whisper of water he would never have noticed. Amazement loosened a laugh from his throat. The children invented new chores. Marin strung empty flag ribbons between poles, bright cloth waving to scare birds. Sarah followed behind Nathan, patting tiny mounds over missed seeds. Reith fetched spare parts from the tool shed and oiled the mech mule's joints with leftover cooking grease, declaring, "Smooth steps save power." When the machines walked again, their squeal was softer. Afternoon heat hammered down. Clouds gathered, dark yet paper-thin signs of a dry storm. Not a rainstorm, Daria warned. Wind began to gust, hot and sharp like breath from a forge. Wheat sprouts bent low. "Storms like this rip roots loose," Daria said. "We need shelter screens." Nathan's mind raced. He owned only 3 screens, old and brittle. Daria pointed to broken fence planks and grain sacks. Together they hammered makeshift panels. Layering cloth over wood frames, Reith drove stakes. Marin tied knots so tight Nathan's fingers ached trying to match them. Even little Sarah carried stones to weigh the bottoms. As they worked, Grant Turner's car passed again. this time carrying to guild inspectors in blue coats. The inspectors noted the hastily built screens and scribbled on slates. One called out, "Temporary structures must meet code. Fines begin tomorrow." Nathan bit back anger. Daria placed a calming hand on his forearm. Her skin cooled despite heat. "Fields first," she whispered. Wind roared by sunset. The screens held, cloth snapping like sails. Fine grit stung faces, but seedlings clung to soil. Under russet twilight, Nathan watched particles swirl over the fields, yet saw hardly any. Loss! Gratitude welled up. These strangers had already saved the season's hope. When the worst gusts eased, Daria led the children to the irrigation pump house, a small metal shed to share a plan. Night breeze will draw moisture from the storms. "Tail," she told Nathan, "if we trap that vapor, the soil drinks for free." She sketched shapes in dust, tall tripods with webbing at the top. "Something between a net and the sail." "Sky nets," Reith explained proudly. "Old Solari trick. They scavenged until moonrise. Old cargo mesh, bent pipes, and lengths of wire became 3 shaky towers along the north field. Sierra's tiny hands threaded last knots. Before climbing down, Daria waited until a breath of wind billowed the mesh, lifting it like a quiet flag. In the dim light, droplets formed along twisted strands, tiny jewels glimmering. Nathan exhaled wonder. Every drop might mean a saved stock. Exhaustion pulled at muscles. Yet spirits rose. They shared dinner on the porch, roasted tubers, and a pot of weak broth stretched with herbs Daria had gathered near the creek bed. The children ate with quiet joy. After dishes were washed, Nathan showed the loft's dusty telescope. He let Reith peer at a bright belt of stars. Daria watched her son's face glow. "Home cluster," she murmured. "It once looked brighter. There was sorrow, but also strength." Nathan felt their shared silence knit threads between them, stronger than any net. Later, as crickets sang, Daria paused at the ladder to the loft. "Storms will come again," she said, "but nets can grow." Nathan nodded. "I have more scrap. Tomorrow we build bigger." She smiled, tired but determined, and climbed up. The children settled quickly, safe under rough blankets. Alone on the porch, Nathan glanced across the fields. Screens fluttered, nets glittered under thin starlight. Each shape reminded him of new beginnings. He recalled Grant's warning and the inspector's threats, but also remembered Daria's calm scorn and her children's fierce will. The farm felt different now, no longer one man's struggle, but a shared venture braced against it. Hard world. Far away, a low rumble of thunder rolled, though the sky stayed clear. Nathan suspected the guild would rumble louder soon. Yet with allies at his side, even small ones, he believed he could weather whatever test came next. He locked the pump house, whispered a quick prayer to any stars listening, then followed. Warm lamplight into his home. Outside, the net swayed gently, catching invisible threads of water from the night air, weaving promise drop by drop into the thirsty soil below. Warning lights spilled over Grayridge, turning each sky net into a spider web of shining beads. Nathan stepped outside and laughed softly. The cloth sagged under the weight of water. They had trapped overnight. Daria placed metal pans beneath every corner and let the droplets fall in soft plinks. Before breakfast they filled to barrels. More clean water than Nathan usually gathered in a week. Hope felt solid enough to lift. Yet trouble arrived with the first dust gust. A lean guild inspector on a wheeled bike, coat still blue from yesterday. He handed Nathan a stamped notice. "The screens and nets," he declared, "were unauthorized agricultural modifications. A fine of 500 grain units was due in 10 days, or the farm would be seized." Nathan single quotes as stomach tightened like twisted rope. 500 units meant half his expected harvest seed he did not yet have. Daria read the paper, her brow smooth but eyes sharp. 10 days is time, she said. "We will make value, not beg." Nathan wanted to believe her calm tone. He pictured the children's thin wrists and nodded. They decided to keep working, because despair grew nothing. After chores, Daria spread the notice on the kitchen table and studied each rule printed in tiny letters. Reith copied the symbols onto scrap paper, practicing strokes, while Marin rocked Sierra by the open window. Daria explained that the guild only valued two things: grain and water rights. If they could prove the nets were water devices, not barriers, the fee might shrink. Nathan scratched his beard. We still need more to bargain, he admitted. Daria pointed to the dusty well behind the barn. Dig deeper, she urged. Old maps show a stone vein there, cool and wet. The pump's motor was burned out. Yet Nathan remembered an abandoned salvage yard 5 clicks east. Parts might rest there under rust and sand. They set off after lunch, leaving Reith in charge. The boy saluted, shoulders straight. Marin handed her brother a slingshot to chase any thieving birds, and Sarah offered a half-eaten cracker as soldier food. Nathan's old hauler rattled across cracked flats. Sunlight shimmered on broken machinery littering the salvage lot, hulks of harvesters, drone wings, even a bent shuttle fin. An elderly mechanic named Mabel guarded the yard, eyes hidden by welding goggles. She eyed Daria's cloak but spoke to Nathan. Scrap's expensive now, she warned. Daria stepped forward, unrolling a small star chart drawn on Solari silk. This marks a meteor fall rich in sky iron, she said softly. You share a bargain, and the chart is yours. Mabel's breath caught. Sky iron fetched high prices. In minutes they left with a working pump motor, a coil of flex pipe, and a promise to keep the meteor's site secret. They returned near dusk to shouts. Grant Turner's sleek drone sprayer buzzed above the wheat, dumping pale powder that drifted like snow. Reith flung stones with Marin beside him, but the drone stayed high, engines whining. Nathan slammed the hauler to a stop and raced forward. Daria tore a reed whistle from her pouch and blew a low, thrumming note that pulsed through the air. The sky nets quivered, wind curved over the fields strangely, pushing powder into swirling columns. Droplets shook loose, falling as sudden mist. Salt dust melted into harmless sludge that soaked harmlessly into trenches. The drone lost lift in the damp air, sputtered, and crashed beyond the western ridge. Grant's cart sped away, a silver streak under the fading sun's dot. Damage seemed small. Some leaves spotted white, a few seedlings wilted. Nathan knelt, rubbing a trembling hand over soil. Daria joined him. We saved most, she whispered. Her whistle hung silent now, but its echo lingered. Neighbors who had watched the commotion from the road approached, eyes wide at the broken drone. Among them was old Lena May, who ran the community mill. Grant crossed a line, she muttered. Anyone who ruins honest crops cheats us all. One by one, farmers offered spare seed, mesh, or labor. The farm was no longer alone. Through the night, lanterns glowed around the well as they fitted Mabel's motor. Reith handled wrenches. Marin measured pipe angles with chalk lines. Sarah clapped. When the shaft finally turned, at midnight, a deep gurgle echoed below, followed by a surge of cold water that splashed over the rim. Cheers rose, bouncing off distant hills. The hidden vein proved larger than Daria had predicted. Steady flow filled troughs and barrels until they overflowed. Nathan dipped a hand. High school life in a burning land. Sunrise revealed a new sight. Wagons lined up at the fence, neighbors carrying empty canisters. Nathan shared the water freely, asking only that each person sign a petition against the guild fine. By noon, the paper bore dozens of names and thumbprints. The inspector returned, expecting payment, and found instead a crowd. Lena May stepped forward with the petition and stories of sabotage. The inspector's face paled. He promised to review statutes before sunset and rode off fast, cloak flapping. Work did not pause. With fresh water, the group expanded irrigation, planting late beans that still might mature before frost. Daria taught children from other farms how to weave small sky nets over personal gardens. Laughter replaced suspicion. Alien words mixed with human slang until borders blurred. Nathan watched Daria speak with Lena May, planning a shared grain silo. He marveled how one stranger's request for bread had stirred a whole valley awake. Evening brought a council under the shade tree. Barrels of sweet water sat beside baskets of roasted roots. Nathan addressed everyone in a quiet voice. We proved cooperation grows faster than fear. He said, let's form a water co-op. Set fair rates, stand together when the guild presses harder. None spread through the circle. Daria remained at the edge, children curled against her cloak. But her eyes shone bright as starlight on a calm sea. After the meeting, she walked with Nathan past roads now dark and cool. Storms will come again, she reminded, echoing her words of the previous night. And raiders, Nathan added, thinking of Grant and worse threats. Daria looked toward distant hills. Solari proverb, she said softly, a lone root breaks dry, but many roots knit the ground. Nathan smiled. Then let's keep rooting. They paused at the new well. Water hummed in the pipe like a deep heartbeat. Reed slept nearby, head resting on a wrench. Marin leaned on her brother, and Sierra held her whistle. Dreaming of sky nets, Nathan draped a blanket over them. Daria watched her children, relief and pride softening her features. She turned to Nathan. For the first time in many cycles, she murmured, "My children will sleep without hunger." A breeze lifted the farm's homemade screens, cloth, fluttered like quiet flags of a budding alliance. Above, constellations glittered. Somewhere beyond, guild merchants plotted profits, and powerful neighbors planned new schemes. Yet on this ground a different power stirred, one woven from shared water, shared soil, and hands that refused to let each other fall. Nathan rested beside the well, listening to its steady rhythm. Tomorrow finds might return, and Grant might strike again. But tonight the farm breathed easier. Droplets slid down sky nets, landing in barrels with soft musical taps, counting blessings one by one until dawn. Dawn broke clear and cool. Nathan loaded sacks of grain and barrels of fresh water into the old hauler. Daria stood by the fence, watching him pack. Her cloak flapped in the gentle wind. "Be safe," she said softly. Nathan nodded. "I'll reach the market before noon." Reith and Marin carried jars of honey and dried fruit for the journey. Sarah balanced on a sack, clutching her whistle. Daria hugged each child. "Your work here will guard our harvest," she whispered. The children pressed small seeds into her hand. "Grow strong," they said in tiny voices. Daria smiled through tears. The whole route crossed 10 miles of cracked flats before reaching the old trade road. Daria had studied ancient star maps. On Solari silk, she traced a line with slender finger. "We cut to days off the trip by following this valley," she explained. Nathan trusted her knowledge. He fired up the engine and steered toward distant hills dot as they climbed gentle slopes. The horizon opened to a snake of dusty road. A rider emerged in the distance. Nathan slowed. The figure wore a hood and rode an old skiff bike. Daria tensed. The hooded rider raised a hand. It was Grant Turner. He blocked their path and dismounted. "You think your new friends help?" he sneered. "Guild wants its fee." Nathan stepped down and faced Grant. "We have fair trade," he said, voice firm. "We pay according to market price." Grant laughed and tapped his comm badge. "The guild set the price for us." He waved at the barrels. "Those waters belong to me." Nathan's heart slammed. He never thought Grant would chase him. Here Dir moved beside Nathan. She laid a hand on his arm. "We have something he wants more," she said. Grant sneered. "A star chart? No guild cares about legends." Daria smiled and unrolled the silk. The chart glowed faint under weak morning sun. Constellations formed a map to a sky-iron meteor site. "This metal sells for more than grain," she said. Grant's eyes widened. "Show me proof," he demanded. Daria reached into her pouch and held out a small ingot of sky-iron, dark blue and heavy. Grant's jaw slackened. He stepped forward and ran his fingers over the surface. The metal felt like cooled fire under his touch. Nathan felt hope bloom. Perhaps this gift could save them. Grant turned the ingot, weighing it in his hand. "Guild Council will confirm," he said slowly. "If true, you cut the grain fine by 50%. Nathan exhaled relief. 50% was a fair price. Daria nodded. "We accept." Grant pocketed the ingot and strode back to his bike. "I'll see you into mornings at the east gate," he called. "Bring your receipts." With Grant gone, Nathan helped Daria repack the goods. The journey continued in silence. The road curved along rust-red cliffs. They reached the Sentinel Ridge at noon. Below, the market town lay in dust haze. Carts and wagons formed a busy web around low stone buildings. Traders called out, hawking spices, metals, and fresh produce. Nathan guided the hauler to the grain yard. Guild clerks in brown vests weighed his sacks and stamped each receipt. Daria watched the exchange. She counted the grains marked on each ticket and frowned at the guild's rates. "They cheat small farmers," she whispered. Nathan pressed her hand. "We have water and skyron." He reminded her, "We have power." At the water stall, they sold barrels at a fair price. Neighbors lined up for containers, grateful for clean water on their hot journey. Daria offered mugs of sweetened water to thirsty children. Their laughter echoed through the market like soft bells. Nathan felt pride. Their farm's harvest meant life beyond Grey Ridge. Then they moved to the skyron broker. A tall woman with braided hair and gold earrings inspected the ingot. She tapped it with a small hammer and listened. Each ring told of pure metal. She smiled and offered credits. Daria's eyes sparkled. The credits paid the guild fee twice over and left extra for tools and seed. Nathan and Daria counted the credits under a striped awning. The extra would buy warm coats for the children and new mesh for sky nets. Daria tucked credits into a pouch. "We have enough to share," she said. Nathan agreed. "We leave some behind for neighbors." The sun dipped low. They packed the leftover grain and water into the hauler. At the east gate, Grant waited beside. To guild clerks, he unfolded the receipts and surveyed the tall stack of credits. His lips curled in reluctant respect. "Well done," he said. "Guild will honor the new rate." Nathan's chest loosened. He bowed slightly. Grant hesitated, then offered a handshake. Nathan took it. It felt cold but honest. Grant nodded to the clerks, released their permit. The clerks stamped the papers and handed them back. Daria and Nathan moved past the gate. Hearts light with victory. The road home glowed under a ginger sunset. Daria guided the hauler along the secret valley route. The children waited at dusk, watching for headlights on the horizon. When the hauler appeared, tiny Sierra ran forward and hugged the front bumper. Reith and Marin cheered and kicked up dust. Nathan shut off the engine and stepped down. Daria embraced her children first, then Nathan. Moonlight glimmered on her silver cloak and the star maps hidden roots. The farm lay dark, its fields swaying in warm evening wind. Daria smiled at the distant sky. "We will plant again tomorrow," she said. Nathan nodded, eyes bright, "and the roots of our friendship will grow deeper." The children danced around them beneath soft stars. Their laughter joined the whisper of soil and sky. On Grey Ridge, they had turned hunger into hope, water into wealth, and strangers into allies. Tomorrow the fields would rise green again, stronger than any storm or threat, and for the first time, Nathan believed the future belonged to all of them, human and Solari side by side. Morning dawned cool and silver gray. Thin mist hugged the wheat rows while a chorus of sleepy birds cheeped from the fence posts. Nathan stepped onto the porch and breathed the sweet, humid air gift from the night sky nets. Every drop, glittering on the webbing, felt like a quiet victory. Inside the barn, Reith was already taking inventory. He counted barrels of stored water and noted the growing tower of bundled grain. Marin scooped crumbs into a tin for the chickens, humming the Solari water song. Little Sarah swirled around them, ribbons in her hair, covering wooden crates with chalk suns and smiling moons. The farm, once silent, now throbbed with gentle life. Daria emerged from the well house, wiping damp clay from her palms. "The new pump seal holds," she told Nathan, her calm voice warmed by pride. "Steady flow all night." Nathan chuckled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "We might drown before we starve," he teased. But peace on Grey Ridge was brittle. At mid-morning, a guild courier droned dove low and released a gleaming tube that clattered into the dust. Nathan cracked the seal, and his good mood evaporated. "Extraction duty," he muttered, holding the decree aloft. "Every independent well owes a water tax within 48 hours or forfeiture." Neighbors soon crowded beneath the shade. Tree, decree in trembling hands, even Lena May, who usually scoffed at bureaucrats, wore a grave frown. "They want to bleed us before harvest," she said. "And they'll use soldiers if we refuse." Murmurs spread like fire in dry brush. Daria listened, eyes half closed, weighing each fear. At last she knelt and drew a simple map in the dust. the trade road, their farms. The guild station upriver. Fear feeds them, she said quietly. So we will feed the land instead feed every passerby. We make a water festival. Confusion rippled through the group. Share our reserves, Lena scoffed. Daria nodded once. 1 day of giving brings 10 days of shame on those who would steal. Strange silence fell. Then Nathan's slow grin lit his weather-lined face. A harvest table can break a tyrant faster than any sword. He agreed. Preparations erupted. Farmers rolled barrels to the roadside and pitched patchwork awnings. Kids painted bright boards reading free water rest music. Marin taught local children the easy steps to a Solari circle dance. Sarah tied rainbow ribbons to every sky net so the fields looked as if dawn itself had unfurled banners across. The plain dot before sunset, the dusty road buzzed like a busy hive. Miners from up valley arrived with ore carts. Tired travelers stumbled in half-faint and gulped ladles of sweet water. And a troop of planetary pilgrims unpacked flutes carved from starbone. Laughter, song, and the splash of ladles replaced the usual hush of dusk. Fire pits flickered to life. Reith climbed a stump and recited the ancient Solari rain blessing, his voice wavering but strong. Every human echoed the refrain. Visitors chimed harmonies in tongues from 3 systems. The melody lifted, wove around the sky nets, and spilled into the darkening heavens like a prayer of stubborn hope. Rumble of engines cut the music short. Guildhall is sleek, armored, and menacing rolled onto the scene. At their front rode Grant Turner's silver cart, followed by Inspector Halden and 6 baton-bearing guards. Torches flared, revealing tense faces. Mothers drew children close. Nathan stepped forward, cup in hand. "Welcome," he called, voice even. "Share our water." He offered the tin mug to Ward Halden. The inspector's gaze flicked to the crowd, miners with pickaxes, singers with flutes, tired pilgrims cradling ladles, many witnesses ready to judge his next move. Grant dismounted first. He met Nathan's eyes, then accepted the mug and drank a long, deliberate swallow. Trickles dripped from his chin. He exhaled and said only, "Good." Whispers rustled. Grant's defiance of his own guild rang louder than any shout. Halden sputtered. "This dispersal is unauthorized." Grant wiped his mouth and spoke loudly, quoting from charter law. "During declared drought, withholding life water is forbidden." Eyes widened as people realized the inspector was cornered to either uphold life or reject his own statutes. Torches cracked. A miner clapped his dust-grimed hands. Pilgrims lifted flutes and played a quick, bright trill. The guards shifted, unsure. Finally Halden sighed, produced a paper, and stamped it, "Temporary humanitarian permit." He muttered, "Review pending." Relief swept through the crowd like cool rain. Cheers erupted. The music resumed twice as lively. The guards accepted cups of water. Grant took another drink, then nodded to Nathan brief, almost friendly, and climbed back into his cart as the guild convoy rumbled away. Sarah twirled her ribbons in triumph, and Marin leapt into a dance that drew laughter, even from stern Lena May. Hours later, stars spilled across the velvet sky. Barrels now empty, songs drifting into embers. Folk gathered near the well for quiet thanks. Nathan squeezed Daria's shoulder. "You knew generosity would bind their hands," he whispered. She shrugged, smiling tiredly. "The guild counts numbers," she replied. "We make them count hearts." Yet her gaze lingered on the eastern horizon where armored haulers had vanished. "They will return," she warned. Nathan nodded. "Then we'll be ready with more friends." He looked at the festival's remains, strangers chatting like kin, miners leaving full canteens behind as gifts, a pilgrim whittling a tiny flute for Sarah. Hope, he thought, was contagious. They walked back to the farmhouse. Sky nets glittered with new dew, weaving silver threads between earth and starlight. Nathan brushed a net strand. "Let them come," he murmured. "This land is deeper. Roots now," Daria added softly, "and roots hold firm behind them." Sleepy children chased the last fireflies of night while broken torches sputtered out one by one, each faint curl of smoke rising toward a sky that now felt just a little more free. Dawn after the war festival felt like a calm breath before a storm. Soft sunlight slid across puddles left by dancing feet and flipped barrels. The air smelled of wet dust and wood smoke. Nathan rose early, rolling empty containers under the porch to dry. While he worked, distant engines growled on the trade road a deep, steady rumble too heavy for common carts. He paused, heart thumping. The guild was not finished. Darius stepped from the loft, silver cloak draped over one shoulder, eyes sharp despite little sleep. She listened and tilted her head the way she always did when she measured wind. Big haulers. She murmured, armored. Reith, already polishing the well pump, looked up. Are we scared? He asked. Daria placed a calm hand on his shoulder. We are ready, she answered. Yet inside, uncertainty tugged like a loose thread. News spread quickly. 3 guild crawlers, iron-plated and bristling with stun turrets, were advancing toward Greyridge. Inspector Halden rode again, but rumors said a higher official executor. Varro traveled beside him. Varro's name carried fear. He set policy with iron rules and harder fists. Farmers gathered under the shade tree, faces pale. Lena May clutched a petition with 5 more signatures from miners who left at dawn. Words on paper won a night, she said, shaking the sheet, but metal wins wars. Nathan studied the worried crowd, then met Daria's gaze across the ring of neighbors. Without speaking, they remembered the drought raids that scattered the Solari, the lone battles Nathan fought with weeds and wind, and the taste of festival victory still sweet on their tongues. Turning to everyone, he raised a clay cup. We held a feast, he said, voice low but steady, because water belongs to life, not ledgers. Today we stand for that truth, peaceful, firm, many. Plants sprouted like seed in wet soil. Reith led young ones to dig shallow zigzag trenches across the southern approach, covering them with reed mats and dust so they looked like solid ground. Marin and other teens wove extra sky nets, fixing them between tall posts to cast wide silver veils over the front fields. Daria spent hours in the pump house with Nathan, refitting pipes to feed hidden spray nozzles along the fence. Each step used simple tools and simpler hopes. When twin suns reached their highest point, engines thundered nearer. Crawling towers of steel rolled into view, tracks chewing earth. Banners on their sides showed the blue gear emblem of the Water Guild. Armed guards flanked a polished command skiff where Varro stood, cloak glossy and dark as coal. Inspector Halden followed at his heel like a nervous dog. The convoy halted before the farm's front gate, nothing more than to fence poles, now decorated with bright ribbons left from the festival. Behind those ribbons stood a wall of people, young and old, human and Solari, each holding a plain tin cup of water. Grant Turner was there too. Coat dusty, expression tight. His presence surprised Nathan, but boosted courage down the line. Executor Varro dismounted. Sunlight flashed on his silver rank pins. He surveyed the crowd with cool disdain, then spoke, voice flat as sheet metal. You are warned. Unauthorized wells and distribution must cease. Water tax collection begins now. He gestured toward the pump house. 2 guards strode toward it, weapons raised. Daria stepped forward, whistle hanging from a cord around her neck. This land gives freely, she said. We share, we barter, we live. Your law steals life. Varro's eyes narrowed. Law builds order, he replied. Order builds profit, his hand flicked. The guards reached the fence and found the latch wired shut. One swung his baton to break it. Nathan lifted his cup, behind him. Reith blew a short signal on a small horn fashioned from pipe scrap. Children yanked vines tied to the reed mats, covered. Trenches collapsed, leaving sudden pits. The first crawler lurched, nose-diving. Tracks spinning uselessly in air. Shot guards scrambled. Dia raised her whistle and sounded a long, low note. Skynets shivered. Nozzles hidden along the posts hissed. A cool mist burst outward, mixing with drifting dust. Within seconds, a thick fog spread, blurring shapes. Startled guild troops coughed, wiping water from visors. Stun turrets sparked, circuits shorting in the damp. Varro barked orders. But his voice faded in the white veil. Amid the confusion, Grant slung a portable holocaster high on a pole. Bright blue light flickered, broadcasting live images to off-world markets where guild investors drank morning tea. Millions now watched their armored crawlers stuck, their soldiers blinded by a farmer's fog, their law challenged by children with cups. Inspector Halden stumbled from the mist, robes soaked. Seeing Grant's camera, he waved frantically. Shut that off. Grant only shook his head. His earlier rivalry with Nathan burned away by witnessing simple courage. Let the galaxy see. He whispered. Inside the haze, Daria guided wandering. Guards away from the pits, speaking softly in human tongue so they understood. No one struck. No one cursed. Where Prophet used fear, she used grace, showing the cameras something stronger than force. At last the pumps were cut by Nathan himself. He pulled a lever that closed the main valve, proving the farm could deny water rather than let it be stolen. Fog settled into dew. Shapes emerged, townsfolk still holding their cups, untouched. Guild crawlers tilted helpless, Varro standing alone. Cloak heavy with moisture, cheers rose from the crowd, not loud, but full of solid resolve. Varro glared, then caught sight of the holocaster's blinking light. For a long breath he weighed pride against public defeat. Finally he raised both hands, palms out. All extraction orders are suspended, he announced, words echoing through a speaker drone. Independent wells will register with the Planetary Council for humanitarian status. Whispers surged. Suspension meant victory, at least for now. Lena may march forward. Petition in hand. Varro stamped it, his seal turning the sheet into temporary charter for the Greyridge Water Cooperative. Halden added his signature with trembling pen. Contract drones zipped overhead, recording. With formality done, guards dragged steel cables to winch the crawler free. Townsfolk lent lifts and shovels, not out of duty, but because helping another out of a hole felt right. Nathan watched Varro's surprise as aliens and humans labored beside guild troops without grudge. Sometimes, he realized, kindness embarrassed power more deeply than resistance. Suns dipped low before the convoy rolled back toward the hills, slower, dented, but unchallenged. Grant lingered, shook Nathan's hand, and muttered, "Guess I was wrong about a lot." He left the holo recording of the day's events in Nathan's care-proof and reminder. Night settled soft. Lanterns glowed along trenches now filled and safe. Daria sat on the porch step. Children curled against her cloak. Nathan joined her, offering a small loaf baked from their first milled grain. For the road behind us, he said. She broke it, shared pieces with the children, then handed half back. And for the road ahead, Ruth asked, eyes bright, will the guild come again? Daria looked over starlit nets singing with fresh droplets. Maybe, she said. But next time they will face more than one farm. They will face every. Root our hope is planted, Nathan added, and roots grow deeper when watered together. They sat listening to the gentle drip of nets and the low hum of the pump now guarded by law. They had reshaped. A breeze carried laughter from neighbors, finishing trench repairs. Above, constellations sparkled on clear black canvas, as if celebrating this small, improbable triumph on a dusty moon. Nathan glanced at Daria. Stay, he whispered. Voice barely more than breath. Call this home. Daria's eyes shimmered, reflecting the soft porch light. She pressed her palm over his heart, a solary sign of promise. Home, she agreed, simple and sure. Far across the plains, Executor Varro's convoy became tiny. Swallowed by night, leaving behind a place forever changed not by blades or credits, but by a widow's vow, a farmer's faith, and a community brave enough to pour hope into every waiting cup.